It is Chad here from GadgetGuruHD.com, and in this video I'll be comparing the Nexus 5 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. Now both the Note 3 and the Nexus 5 are high-end smartphones, but they are different in a variety of ways. We're going to start this video off with the software, which is one of the most notable differences between the two handsets. The Nexus 5 runs the latest version of Android, 4.4 KitKat. What's fantastic about Nexus branded phones is that they will always be the first to be updated to the newest Android versions, while other devices like the Galaxy Note 3 and Galaxy S4 will receive the update several weeks or even months later. In addition, Nexus users receive what is known as stock Android, which is essentially how Google envisions Android to be. 4.4 KitKat is a bit of an overhaul and is generally cleaner, with new icons and translucent menus and bars, replacing the older black colored design. The Samsung Galaxy Note 3 currently runs Android 4.3 Jelly Bean, which is still great and also has a ton of features, but it actually runs Samsung's own skin over what is known as stock Android, which is what I just mentioned earlier. There are also added features which can also be fun. Some examples are Pen Window, which allows you to draw an area on the screen to run one or more apps at the same time. What's awesome is that you can also adjust how large each window is and move them around. Multi-screen lets you share the display between two applications, and you can't forget the ton of apps and features designed to take advantage of Samsung's S Pen, which is a stylus that allows you to draw, take notes, and do more. Now the most obvious difference between the two devices is that the Galaxy Note 3 is much larger than the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5 measures in at 137mm tall and 69mm wide, while the Galaxy Note 3 measures 151mm in height and 79mm in width. Now, it might be a bit tough to actually visualize that in your head with just the numbers, so that's why I'm going to be having all of these devices side by side for a good comparison. And one of the main questions I'm asked about both of these two phones is whether or not they can be held and used comfortably in one hand. The Galaxy Note 3 is very tough to use one-handed, and I'm obviously unable to do it, but I have heard that other people with ginormous hands can, but keep in mind that this device is enormous. The Nexus 5, on the other hand, is much more comfortable in the hands and is for the most part fully operatable. The Galaxy Note 3 is made of a softer fake or fox leather, while the Nexus 5 is made of a matte material like the Nexus 7 2013. In my opinion, the Nexus 5 is made of a nicer material. Both devices are very light, but the Nexus 5 is 30 grams less than the Galaxy Note 3. However, you must keep in mind that the Nexus 5 is significantly smaller. And overall, they have a pretty nice feel to them, but I'm going to have to go to the Nexus 5 in terms of the overall feel in the hand. Now, some of you may be surprised to hear that the Galaxy Note 3 is actually thinner than the Nexus 5 by about 0.3mm, but I'll be honest, it isn't really too noticeable unless you have both devices side by side like I do here. In terms of screen size, the Nexus 5 has a 4.95-inch 1080p IPS display at 455 pixels per inch. The screen is more realistic looking and performs a bit better in outdoor conditions, and the Galaxy Note 3 has a 5.7-inch 1080p Super AMOLED display at 386 pixels per inch. Now you have to keep in mind with the pixels per inch stuff, that all makes a huge difference with the screen size, and the Nexus 5 only has more pixels per inch because of the smaller display, so keep that in mind. The screen on the Galaxy Note 3 is a bit more saturated and exaggerated, but it still does look fantastic. The Nexus 5 can be purchased in 16 and 32 variants with black and white available. And like the Nexus 5, the Galaxy Note 3 can also be bought in black and white, but instead of only 16 and 32GB variants, it's also available in a 64GB version. There are no differences between the black and white Galaxy Note 3s, but there are some design changes between the two different colored Nexus 5s. So for more on that, I'll have a video linked down below in the description, not by me, but by some other YouTuber that I have really enjoyed. Now, the battery on both devices is very impressive. The Galaxy Note 3 features a 3200 mAh battery and receives a good 2 days of usage. And I'll be honest, it's practically impossible to go through the battery in one day. The Nexus 5 on the other hand features a smaller 2300 mAh battery that can also make it through the day, but it's nowhere near as good as the Galaxy Note 3's. If you're having issues with battery life on the Nexus 5, I'll have a link down below in the description to where you can watch one of my videos on how I've been able to improve the Nexus 5's battery. The Galaxy Note 3 has a removable back and also expandable storage, But unfortunately the Nexus 5 has neither of those, so if your battery dies or you run out of storage, then you're pretty much out of luck. Both the Galaxy Note 3 and Nexus 5 are extremely powerful phones. They both feature the same Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 quad-core processor, and it performs extremely well. Both of these devices offer super smooth operation of the Android operating system, and they're easily capable of multitasking plenty of apps and handling graphic-intensive games. What is different between the two is the amount of RAM they have. The Nexus 5 has 2GB of RAM while the Galaxy Note 3 has 3GB of RAM. But I'll be honest, there isn't a huge noticeable difference between the two because of it, but it's always nice to have more RAM. In terms of the smoothness of both devices, I'd have to go with the Nexus 5 being more smooth, but that probably does have to do with the stock Android 4.4 KitKat on the device. And the TouchWiz on the Galaxy Note 3 isn't laggy, but it isn't extremely responsive like the Nexus 5. The camera on both devices aren't amazing, but they are pretty decent. The Nexus 5 uses an 8MP rear-facing shooter, which performs pretty well, while the Galaxy Note 3 has a 13MP camera. If I had to choose one camera over the other, I would probably go with the Galaxy Note 3 over the Nexus 5, because picture quality just seemed a bit more vivid. And probably the nice way to put the Nexus 5 camera is that it really isn't very good. I really wouldn't recommend purchasing the Nexus 5 just for the camera, because if you're going to be taking a lot of pictures, the Nexus 5 definitely isn't for you. Google and LG probably had to find somewhere to cut the price down on the Nexus 5, and that area definitely was the camera because it really isn't all that great. In terms of the front-facing cameras, those are pretty much self-explanatory. They aren't great, and there isn't really any great front-facing cameras on any phones as of today. But overall, both the Galaxy Note 3 and Nexus 5 are fantastic devices, and I can't recommend one phone over the other simply because they're so different in terms of size. You have to really consider what your needs are and go over this video again and check out what you want in your phone. For myself, the Nexus 5 is probably a better fit because the Note 3 is just too large for me. Plus, I prefer the stock Android experience, and TouchWiz is just a bit too bloated for me. Anyway, hopefully this video did help you all decide between the Galaxy Note 3 and Nexus 5, and if it did, please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. I'll have links down below to both my Galaxy Note 3 and Nexus 5 review, so be sure to check those out as well. This has been Chad from GadgetGuruHD.com, and I'll see all of you in my next video.